Hey guys, it's Pony Lover 37 here, bringing you another Sonic Top 10 list. Today we're counting down the top 5 hottest characters in Sonic the Hedgehog. There are no rules. Number 5 is Big the Cat. I think Big the Cat certainly is big.
Sonic the Hedgehog is a series that I have personally grown up with and loved since I was very, very young. My very first introduction to the series was with Sonic Rush on the DS, a game that still holds the title of my favourite Sonic game, and from there moved on to playing the original Sonic the Hedgehog on an actual Genesis that my dad owned and played in his younger years. This was when my passion for the Sonic series began, and as time has passed, I've watched the series' overall reputation sour dramatically with the coming of the internet. Hey, do you like Sonic the Hedgehog? Yeah, I do. Ah, cool, wanna come over and play some Sonic Adventure? Hey, do you like Sonic the Hedgehog? Disgusting furry fat, kill yourself. Sonic the Hedgehog was one of the most revered gaming franchises, speeding onto the scene in 1991 with the original game that started it all, followed by equally well-received sequels that served as a genuine competitor for Nintendo's Mario and every other gaming company out at the market at the time. Sonic was everywhere back in the day, but as time passed, the Hedgehog suffered the terrible fate of experimentation, and so followed a slew of incredibly mediocre or terrible games that brought the series down to where it is today. At this point, we're expecting each coming Sonic game to be terrible, and though we've had a fair share of decent to great Sonic games released within the past decade, overall the series has acquired itself a horrible reputation, no thanks to its own fandom. In my Ruined Forever episode on Rick and Morty, I discussed the effects a toxic fanbase can have on a series' reputation, and what happens to a series because of it. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the most popular examples of this, way up there with My Little Pony and recently Undertale. When you think of the Sonic fandom, what is it that first comes to your mind? Is it the ridiculous OCs that people create? The incredibly weird and disgusting fan art? Seriously, f*** you if you draw shit like this. Or the whiny and irritating fans who complain about everything to do with the series. Sonic the Hedgehog's fanbase is as notorious as it is for a reason. For this video, I'm going to split this analysis into two parts. What SEGA did to ruin Sonic, and what the fanbase did to ruin Sonic. First, let's start with...
where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
The game that most consider to be the beginning of the whole mess was 2005 Shadow the Hedgehog. A game that many love, but overall serves as an important moment in history for the franchise where everything went to hell. In contrast to the previous release, Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog was a dark and gritty game that took itself way too seriously. The issue with it is how hard SEGA tried to make it seem, what's that word the internet loves to overuse? Starts with an E, I can't... entertaining, that's the one. The problem with Shadow the Hedgehog is that it was overly entertaining. Sporting the most terrible swear word SEGA could think of that would still allow for a PG rating, unnecessary amounts of guns, and blood, ooh. It was such a far cry from what Sonic games usually were, and in recent times, Shadow the Hedgehog has resulted in an onslaught of jokes directed towards the franchise, pretty much single-handedly fueling the ironic OC jokes. And then what came after Shadow the Hedgehog? Well, what many consider to be the worst game in existence. I've already talked in length about Sonic 06, but this game is the one that many blame for killing the franchise. Shadow may have hurt Sonic a bit, but this was the game that absolutely murdered it. Sonic 06 was set out to be one of the most ambitious Sonic games yet, serving as a spiritual successor to the beloved Sonic Adventure games, being plot-heavy, containing a plethora of playable characters, and, for the time, impressive graphics. Hopes were high when the game was showcased at E3, however the issue plaguing the entire project was that SEGA was rushing its release for the Christmas season to make more profit. And, well, the rest is history. Sonic 06 was released as a broken, unplayable mess, and it was from here that Sonic the Hedgehog became a series that no one could take seriously.
It's no use!
What followed was generally panned by critics due to the dominating nature of gimmicks replacing what people actually wanted in a Sonic game. Running. Sonic and the Secret Rings, Sonic and the Black Knight, Sonic Unleashed, all games that mostly prioritized a new game mechanic that took away from what people wanted. So between a broken mess of a game and a number of bad games, things were not looking good for the Sonic franchise. And I think Sonic Team realized this. Now, don't get me wrong, while I'm not a fan of Sonic Unleashed personally, the day sections are absolutely brilliant, and looking upon their successes in the game, Sonic Team knocked it out of the park with the next two major installments in the franchise. Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations were a brilliant return to form, and they seemed to restore the series briefly in the public eye. However, the series had already taken a pretty massive hit, and Generations just wasn't enough to save it. All it took was a generally lukewarm reception of Lost World to sour everyone's opinions once again, and then the final nail in the coffin. The time when Satan himself took over SEGA and created the worst game in existence, Sonic Boom. Boom was very clearly meant to serve as a reboot for the franchise, but it failed spectacularly. While the comic was great and the show was pretty well received, the game, Rise of Lyric, was an absolute disaster. And as a result, Sonic was officially solidified as a terrible series with no return. Then came 2016. With the announcement and eventual release of Sonic Mania came a brief period of redemption for Sonic, with critics and fans praising the game to no end. Sonic Mania was an absolutely brilliant game and had so much effort and care put into it. It gave people what they wanted again, a good old-fashioned Sonic game, not a werehog or motion controls or this. This was the first time where I really thought that when people said Sonic was going to be good again, it was actually a possibility. And following on from it was the highly anticipated Project Sonic 2017, soon to become Sonic Forces. Following the success of Mania, many were hoping Sonic Forces would be just as good. So not only were expectations their usual high as they always are with each Sonic release, but Mania significantly increased this hype by being so good. So when the game finally came out, well, let's just say people were far from pleased.
I think we're at the point where we need to admit that this was never really a great franchise. Nope. And that we keep trying and trying and trying to find this thing that was never really actually there.
Sonic was never good.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
To do with the recent release of Forces, I feel everyone initially went into it expecting to hate it. That, or it was expected to be the best goddamn thing ever thanks to how good Mania was. Either way, you were going to be let down regardless. I liked Forces. It wasn't fantastic, but I was just happy to play a proper Sonic game again. It had plenty of flaws, but nonetheless I enjoyed it. And yet, we're now back in a state of everyone saying how much Sonic sucks, and acting as if Mania and the other great Sonic games never happened. The problem with the franchise is the bias against it, but for once I can actually understand this bias. Sonic has been a series that continuously raises the hopes of many, only to disappoint. However, it is also the fault of those who keep expecting Sonic games to be better than they actually are. The hype raises everyone's expectations tenfold, and as a result, the games eventually released are subject to much harsher criticism than what they actually deserve. Forces wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad, jeez. There's this constant cycle that always seems to be present with Sonic games. Sega announces a new Sonic game, everyone gets excited for it, and then people shit all over it as soon as it comes out. This is called the hype cycle, and it doesn't only apply to Sonic. The same happened recently with EA's Star Wars Battlefront 2, but we all know how that ended. Sonic the Hedgehog is a series that is all over the place in terms of great releases, and this is all because of...
I see it! So that blue hedgehog's the apeless trigger?
Sonic the Hedgehog is a series that has dabbled into almost every possible genre of gaming known to man. Racing, fighting, RPG, shooter, Sonic's got it all, and not many of these that stray outside the formula that people actually like have been well received. People prefer Sonic when it's kept simple, relying solely on the core mechanics that make Sonic, Sonic. And that's why games like Sonic Advanced, Sonic Rush, and Sonic Mania are so revered. Meanwhile, you got Sonic Riders, Sonic and the Secret Rings, and Sonic Shuffle that were forgettable and generally hated. Sega keeps taking away from the formula that worked so well in the first place, and it's taken them a while to realize this. While I'm certainly not saying it's a good thing to make the same game over and over and pump out the exact same game on a yearly basis, Sega keeps taking too many risks with Sonic, and it's surprising that they keep making the same mistakes. Their most successful games came in the form of ones that returned Sonic to his usual formula, and you'd figure they would realize this, but instead they keep trying to make Sonic something he isn't, and it's why so many Sonic games and the franchise as a whole is so poorly looked upon. The problem is that Sega continuously keeps trying to throw extra features in their games. The reason Sonic Generations was so successful was because the game had no extra gimmicks. Sega learnt from previous games and created a Sonic game with nothing but the best bits of prior installments. All you did in the game was run, and that's why people loved it so much. And that's not to say gimmicks are a bad thing, but when they absolutely dominate a game and take away from the rest of it, it does affect the game overall. I give Sega props for trying, but by now they've essentially tried everything, and it's why so many are sick of the franchise. But don't mistake me for a Sonic fan trying to explain away every bad decision Sega's ever made. Sonic games just don't have the polish that games like Mario Odyssey has. Sega seems to prioritize presentation and gimmicks over actual gameplay, and it's why games like Forces look so good and sound so good, but don't play so well. They then keep trying to cover up for it by adding things like classic Sonic for the sake of nostalgia. I think we can all unanimously agree that the Sonic games have the best soundtracks of anything ever. Sega always nails the presentation of their games, but the games themselves usually leave much to be desired. Sonic is a series genuinely attributed with being fun and lighthearted, but most of the series' faults comes from the games taking themselves too seriously. When you strip the series of its lore and look at it at face value, it's a series about anthropomorphic animals running around and fighting against a deformed doctor and his robots. There's nothing wrong with that, but more times than I can count has this series tried to tell a serious story, only to have it backfire due to the concept of a black hedgehog saying damn being absolutely hilarious.
Damn.
Nowadays, Sonic has most certainly had a proper opportunity to tell a serious story revoked, and so now, regardless of how cool Sonic Team tries to make a villain, people will only perceive them as an edgelord and trying to be edgy. For what it's worth, I think Infinite is awesome. Sonic is at his best when he and the other characters don't take everything too seriously, and it's evident SEGA has struggled with mixing both lighthearted characters with stakes and dangerous situations. A few Sonic games have done this pretty well, but it's never quite reached that simple mix that Mario has done so well. However, this has been done right in the Sonic series before, in the form of the now defunct Archie comics. The long-running Sonic comic told some fantastic stories, and managed to find the perfect balance between serious storytelling with high stakes, and still managing to keep its cast as enjoyable and light-hearted characters who don't take everything too seriously. Even Shadow. The Sonic Archie comics were absolutely fantastic, most of the time, because they properly fleshed out the characters and long-running story arcs, and we get to watch the cast grow and develop as characters. The issue is that the Sonic games do not have that liberty. Sonic Forces is a great example of how storytelling in Sonic games is so flawed. The game has to rush its plot, and presents to us this massive change in the status quo for the series in text and marketing. The game doesn't explain the before of what happens, and the same is true for most other Sonic games. A lot of them seem to take place in separate universes that don't follow a continuing story, instead they just present us with the sudden theme of the game. Generations, for example, has all the characters gathering for Sonic's birthday, and then suddenly everyone is swallowed up into a portal and the game begins. The only game that's lingered on the story is Sonic 06, but we all know how well that went. The original Sonic games just began. There wasn't much of a plot to follow, and when there was one, it was reasonably self-explanatory. Sonic and Tails fly to Island, get the emerald stolen by Knuckles, and the game begins. Simple as that. The modern Sonic games simply don't have enough time, or don't provide themselves with enough time to tell a story. Some Sonic games have done this really well, but most of them rush through their plot too quickly for the player to latch onto it. The gameplay doesn't grow the characters in any way, and the plot within most Sonic games takes place in cutscenes that occur in between the levels. But to be honest, I'm fairly certain most players don't really care about a story. They just want to run and beat Eggman and play a Sonic game. But SEGA keeps trying to turn Sonic into something it isn't. Sonic as a character is one that many find hard to like. Nowadays he comes off as your typical cartoon protagonist who does nothing but taunt the villain and show off how cool he supposedly is. Back in the 90s, at the time of Sonic's conception, this characterization was awesome. It was what consumers wanted at the time. Sonic was the definition of cool, and his games, shows, and merchandise reflected this. At his core, Sonic was a character representing rebellion and freedom in an attempt to appeal to Sega's target demographic. Fast forward all this time later, and Sonic's personality has remained almost exactly the same. Though he's not necessarily outdated, it has caused many writers to confuse his characterization of carefree and cocky with incessantly annoying. And it's not that he's necessarily an unlikable character, but instead because Sonic Team has dragged Sonic in the dirt for so long that the brand no longer holds the title it once did.
I'm had with all you frickin' trolls, and all you frickin' haters, and all you frickin' Sonic fan frick!
Now, as previously mentioned, Sonic the Hedgehog has one of the worst goddamn fan bases I've ever seen. In fact, it may be the worst ever. I have been legitimately scarred for life by some of the things I've seen from Sonic fans. I'm not saying that everyone in the fandom is bad, but unlike a lot of fandoms that are generalized as being filled with whiny babies, the Sonic fandom actually is. It's like 50-50. Or 60-40. An insatiable, loud, obnoxious, disgusting, whiny mess of a fanbase that is one of the other key factors that has caused Sonic to get such a bad rap. You'd be hard-pressed to find a person claiming that Sonic sucks who doesn't complain about the Sonic fanbase, but I feel the Sonic fandom is that rare exception where the fanbase is actually as bad as the internet has generalized it as. This isn't the My Little Pony fanbase, which is allegedly filled with 40-year-old virgins living in their mum's basements, or the Rick and Morty fanbase, entirely comprised of elite intellectuals. Instead, the Sonic fanbase is infested with this disgusting subspecies of human known as children. No offense if you're a kid watching this though. Love you. I'm not going to try and say that every kid who likes Sonic is as bad as this, but goddamn is the Sonic fanbase filled with people like this. It is commonly known that the Sonic fanbase can never be pleased. Overwhelming numbers of people want the games to include more classic elements, while an equally overwhelming number want the games to be more linear. SEGA includes both, and then no one is happy. They are insatiable. It's a generally ungrateful and incredibly toxic fanbase that really makes you stop and think, how the hell did it get this bad? I look to my dad, an avid fan of the original Sonic back in the day, and wonder how it turned from people like him to this. I wouldn't dare try and tell him what the Sonic he once loved has become nowadays. It's really scary when you think about it. I'm fairly certain it's a combination of the simplistic gameplay and story that allowed for easy entry into the series, being mixed in with that weird closeted crowd of internet users that go wild on sites like DeviantArt and Tumblr that have absolutely torn the franchise to shreds with how they presented it to others. There are plenty of Sonic fans that are still fantastic, but you'd be hard pressed to find ones on the internet you can sit down and have a discussion with without discussing why linearity apparently equals bad or Son Amy. Sonic Team have made plenty of mistakes with their games, but they did not deserve this. When researching this episode, I looked to the depths of how bad this fanbase actually is, and my god was I taken aback. I knew it was bad, but holy crap. But that is not to say that all Sonic fans are bad. That is far from the case, and once more I'd like to state how much I wish the entirety of the fandom didn't get a bad rap. Not everyone is like this. Within the fanbase are a group of incredibly talented and passionate people who create fantastic fan games, movies, and comics. Some of them even went on to create this masterpiece. But goddamn is the Sonic fanbase loud about their queries with the series. People make plenty of jokes about Sonic OC's and incredibly weird Rule 34, but Jesus Christ, I was not expecting the scope that I uncovered. For once, the internet really was not exaggerating. That there are so many people making jokes about it and ironically creating this fan art that it's really hard to tell the difference anymore. Seriously, look up literally any name with the Hedgehog attached to it and be terrified of the result. I have nothing against original characters, but the Sonic ones have seriously gotten out of hand, and then further exaggerated by those making fun of them. The only difference between the Sonic fandom and other gaming franchises is that since they are comprised of largely kids, they don't consider the damage their actions are having when they post shit like this and this. They're more unhinged and ridiculously vocal about their minor complaints towards the franchise. Every fandom has people like this, including Mario. But because these kids have been so loud about their Sonic-related queries, it's reflected upon the entire fanbase. Once again, as I covered in my Rick and Morty video, claiming to be a Sonic fan nowadays doesn't instill much respect.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Much like a lot of things to the internet, meme culture has either absolutely destroyed Sonic's reputation or completely redeemed it, turning it into something completely different. To me, at least, the Sonic series has some of the best in-jokes out there, and so much so that they've been acknowledged by the creators. Repeatedly.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
It's Knuckles.
And with that, I have officially met my Sonic meme quota for the video. I'll stop now. The Sonic Twitter and the Sonic YouTube are entirely self-aware and regularly embrace the criticisms and jokes towards the series. This can either be seen as an ingenious marketing decision or a desperate attempt to save face and join in those relentlessly mocking the series. I'd personally prefer to see it as the former. It's nice seeing a company acknowledging their past mistakes, but they only seem to do this with their tweets, not their games. I think Sonic Team joining in the jokes about the series was a good move. It provided a connection between the fans and the creators, and it was quite unique seeing that in such a popular and big-budgeted series. And this is where I prefer SEGA over other game companies, including Nintendo. Yes, I know what that implies. Nintendo is an incredibly successful powerhouse of a company, while SEGA is a company that has long ago lost its once fantastic reputation, and now is nothing but the butt of jokes. They're essentially the Marvel and DC of the gaming industry. But what I like about SEGA is that they've admitted to their mistakes, and they did something about it. They acknowledge jokes within their fanbase, they communicate with fans, and, my personal favorite, they don't copyright YouTube videos containing their content! Piss off, Nintendo! I'm not trying to say that all of this redeems all of the mistakes that SEGA and Sonic Team have made in the past, but it's still nice to see them actively making an effort to make up for their past failures. Look at this comment from the official Sonic channel on an episode of Game Grumps where they play a Sonic fan game as an example. The Sonic fandom is filled with plenty of talented people, and it's amazing to see Sonic Team acknowledging this instead of striking people down for wanting to show their love for a franchise. Sonic Team has gotten a lot of crap throughout the years, but it's evident that the people working on these games do genuinely care about the franchise and the fans that eagerly await the next Sonic release. SEGA has a sense of humor. They've adapted with the dissipating reputation of Sonic the Hedgehog and have attempted to make light of the situation, and I very much respect them for it. They're way more open with fans and willing to listen, and this provides me with a lot of hope that they'll continue to improve with their games. Sonic is a series that has drifted far from what it originally set out to do, but the fact that it lives on all these years later means that there is something special about the franchise. It does depend on how you look at it, but I personally view the internet's desecration of Sonic as a good thing, in the sense that the franchise has become sort of an ironic joke. The internet took interest in the irony and joy of making fun of the series, and soon turned it from what it once was into a parody of itself, but still enough for the series to thrive, albeit in a different fashion. Sonic is a series about fun, and I guess in a weird, twisted way, the series has adapted to fit this generation's version of fun. I guess.
No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
I love this franchise as a whole. I love the ideas, I love the characters, I love the games, I love the comics, I love most of it. I admit, watching a series I grew up with and adored in my youth turning into this does hurt. It hurts a lot, and it really sucks not being able to enjoy the franchise properly since nobody takes it seriously anymore. However, I still have plenty of hope for the Sonic franchise. Mania and Forces were a step in the right direction, and with the coming of social media, Sonic Team has interacted more and more with fans on a daily basis, and are continuing to improve the relationship between the company and fans. Is the Sonic the Hedgehog series ruined forever? I'd say no. This may just be me being as naive and ignorant as those who I previously mentioned that hail each coming Sonic game as the next big saving grace for the series, but I do think this franchise still has an opportunity to turn itself around. Maybe not erase all the damage that has been done, but between Forces and Mania, Sonic has been continuing on a path to redemption. Hell, the IDW comics could be absolutely fantastic and just as good as what they're preceding. Now we just have to hope that the Sonic movie isn't absolute garbage. Please don't suck. Please don't suck. Please don't. It does hit home as someone who has grown up with Sonic to see what the series has become, but it does fill me with joy to see that it hasn't faded into obscurity, merely mediocrity. Sonic can still be redeemed. We're all just waiting for that next great Sonic game that's going to flip the series on its head once again. Your move, Sega. We're all waiting.